It seems like wherever we look, you throw a stone and somebody's having an election.
Iran has elected a new president. The sole moderate candidate, Masoud Pezeshkian.
No matter what the international media is telling you, everybody who's running in Iran for an election has already been chosen by the Ayatollah.
Please welcome the 46th President of the United States, Joe Biden.
You see a man who cannot hold a train of thought. What is his family thinking? I'm sorry.
A second round of voting for parliament in France on Sunday after the far right's Marine Le Pen won big against President Macron in the first round.
The great rabbi of France, he's urging young French Jews to leave to Israel.
Welcome back, everybody, to our new episode of The Quad. And here in the Jerusalem studios, I'm with my co-hosts, Emily Schrader, activist and journalist, Shama Mishtali, political advisor and cultural activist, as well as many other things, fellow of the Atlantic Council. And today, actually, we are making Quad history. Because we are an equal opportunities show, we decided to bring a man as a guest co-host onto our show, Avi Mayer, former chief editor of the Jerusalem Post, writer, commentator, and the first ever male guest co-host of the Quad.
Fleur, thank you so much. I have to say I'm honored to have been selected as the prime specimen of my gender.
Yes,
and as a representative of all men out there, guys, I will do you proud. And I'm just totally honored to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Avi. We thought you'd be perfect to talk about our topic of this week. And it seems like wherever we look, you throw a stone and somebody's having an election. So we've got the American elections, of which the first real round was the Biden-Trump debate on Thursday night. And we can talk about that in a second. We've got elections coming up in the UK. We had a French election that we still actually don't even know what that's going to come up with. And Emily reminded us, of course, that we had an Iranian election as well. Election. So let's talk about the first one on our list, the U.S. election. And I just have to say something before we open the conversation. The Biden-Trump debate, I actually felt very emotional about it. And I'll tell you why. My mother had dementia for 5 years. She started with dementia in her early 80s. And what I saw on stage made me cry because I saw that President Biden, and I think that the cognitive degeneration is very clear from even when he was here in October, after October 7th. You see there's a real deterioration. You see a man who cannot hold a train of thought. And I just kept thinking, as a daughter of somebody who went through this, what is his family thinking? I'm sorry. What is his family thinking? I'm not being political here for a minute. I'm being human and the daughter of somebody who went through this. And it's so clear to me what this man has. And I just feel, what are his family thinking to put him in that position for the whole world to feel sorry for him? I couldn't even watch it. So I just want to just touch on that for a second about the debate. And then in general, Avi, let's start with you, as you are somebody who's worked for different, also political organizations in America. What do you think? What did you think about the debate, and what do you think about the election? What's going to happen? Are they going to replace Biden? What's going to happen?
Look, the debate was, as you said, very difficult to watch.
Yeah.
I first met then Senator Biden as a college student back in the early 2000s. And he was a man of tremendous vitality. He was incredibly engaging. He was the best retail politician I've ever met. He was speaking to each person individually, and you could see the life in his eyes, and that life was gone in the debate. You didn't see it. He felt stiff, and I agree with you. It was sad to watch. It was never. It was very challenging.
Yeah.
And I think that you have many Americans, particularly Democrats, who are extremely alarmed that the choice now is between Donald Trump, who of course is a very polarizing figure, and President Biden, who we don't know whether he can actually follow through, whether he can actually carry out another term.
I can't begin to imagine this man doing another 4 years.
Yeah.
And then everybody's worried about, what are you left with? Kamala Harris. who is not a very popular vice president, let's be honest.
Well, even the Democrats don't want Kamala Harris.
Exactly.
She's not even in the discussion of maybe someone who could theoretically replace Biden. Nobody wants her.
Yeah, it's funny because some people are talking about Michelle Obama and not Kamala Harris.
But they've been talking about Michelle Obama for a while, and she said
she's not interested.
No. The challenge for the Democrats right now is that the entire operation at the moment is built around re-electing President Biden.
Yeah.
And the notion of bringing someone in, even an attractive candidate, and there aren't that many out there, is very scary. They have to completely start from scratch. Many of the donors are saying they would withdraw their contributions because that's not what they signed on for. And so I don't...
Even in the polls, from what I've seen with the alternatives, Gavin Newsom and people like that, they can't beat Trump anyway.
No, they can't. They don't have the name recognition.
That's going to be something to watch to see what happens.
You know, I also felt like it was really obviously very, very sad to watch this debate on both sides. But one thing that actually stuck out to me beyond Biden's, very apparent deterioration, is that Trump held back.
Yeah.
I think he was trained. If I would have been a political advisor, they would have said, listen, your image is one of a bully. You gotta roll it back, because he was actually okay with Biden.
I was shocked.
He had a few zingers.
But not like
but it was
no
no face
style. I would have expected much worse.
I think it was advised, and it was good advice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was noticing that those few zingers really kind of made the rounds across social media and were picked up by, the anti-Trump crowd, right? The liberal progressives, sort of the people on the extreme left who now and through the war in the Middle East have been trying to target Biden in any way possible. And it's only contributing to this feeling and this sentiment of divisiveness in American politics, which clearly is not taking us anywhere good.
Progressives don't want to vote for Biden. Who the hell are they going to vote for?
We saw in the aftermath that protest in New York City. It was a protest they'll make an excuse to protest about anything, but it was a protest in response to the debate because they were unhappy with the Democratic model and instead wanted to shift to a model of, their words, resistance. What does that mean? Because the protest that they had Hezbollah flags of the Houthis, which includes death to America, on it. They had flags of Hamas, of Hezbollah, all of them were together. They were holding up photos of Yahya Sinwar on the street.
Well, because they don't believe in democracy. That's what it is.
But also, even on a strictly political level, if you look at what happened to Jamal Bowman last week, he is proof positive that approach doesn't work. Americans don't want it. They don't want
However, I'm glad you mentioned him. He was actually our scumbag last week, and we seem to have this kind of curse of the scumbag.
Fleur, it's only you. It's only
I think
you.
it might be my Moroccan genes here. Every time, or not every time, but there have been a few of my scumbags who have either lost elections or died. But we're not going to go into that. We're not going to go into that.
Jamal Bowman,
encouraging me to do Khomeini every week. See if I can put the
or
spell
Sinwar
on him.
or Nasrallah. The options are endless.
But I'm glad you mentioned him because, and this is something we were discussing last week, the world or America or the commentary seem to be blaming the Jews, of course, who else are going to blame, and AIPAC specifically for his loss. And all of a sudden, everybody's focusing on the fact that AIPAC, like there's no other lobbies, like the Qataris don't have a lobby, and every country that we
But
can
it's not
think
even
of,
that. AIPAC isn't an Israeli lobby.
No.
Like, this is the whole problem. They're portraying it as if it represents the interests of some foreign government, and that's not what AIPAC is or has ever been. Like, their interest is the U.S.-Israel relationship. Why? Because it's mutually beneficial. Exactly. That's the only
100%.
reason.
100%.
And their top priority is to keep Israel safe. They're not trying to attack anyone. They're just trying to preserve safety for civilians in Israel.
But Jews defending themselves is offensive to, it turns out, a lot of people. Okay, let's shift, Emily, to what's going on in Iran.
Yes. Election.
Yes, elections.
So after the mysterious helicopter crash of the president and foreign minister of Iran, they're holding runoff elections now, which of course no one is participating. The biggest election campaign going on right now is the campaign against the elections. There's a whole hashtag election circus about this fiasco. There are 4 candidates who ran, all selected by Khamenei, of course, because you can't run if you don't have the approval of the supreme leader.
So it's
democracy, Yes. It's funny, I was actually looking through the constitution of how different positions are selected in the government, and it's even on the Guardians Council, which is who chooses the presidential candidates, those are all chosen. It's 12 people chosen by the Ayatollah. And then it's a few of the positions have to be chosen by some other position. that's appointed by the Ayatollah. So everything circles back to Khamenei, everything. And it's so complicated how they do it so people don't see when they first look at it. And that's intentional. I mean,
And they're touting this guy as a moderate. I mean, not a joke.
Pezeshkian can't, he's not moderate at all. I mean, this is somebody who for 45 years, even prior to the recent wave of crackdown on hijab, which he has condemned, which is why you see Western media being like, oh, maybe he's a good guy. Aggressive. Yeah. He'll do away with the hijab law. The hijab is not the problem. The entire system is the problem because it's a gender apartheid system that systematically discriminates against women on the basis of their gender. And that will not change until you get this extremist interpretation of Sharia and how it views women in the government. It will not change. He's with the Ayatollah in the first place. I mean, we can't expect anything to change until there's regime change.
Absolutely.
The Iranian regime is so good about propping up different levels of extremists in order to kind of present this image that, look, we have alternatives, we have democracy. What do you mean? Which is a classic mistake of the left and of the West, is looking at signs of PR democracy and saying, oh, this is something that we should nurture. And by the way, the Muslim Brotherhood has been so good about doing the same thing, which is presenting itself across different countries in the region as moderates first to consolidate power. I mean,
marketing 101.
Absolutely.
Present 3 options and pretend that the middle one is the best.
Yeah, see what catches on, and playing this sort of socialist reformist character in order to consolidate power as much as possible. And as soon as they have power, they become terrorist governing body.
Because that's what they always were. Okay,
They had about, I just wanted to say one more thing about it. They had about 14% turnout, which is like pretty bad. And you see in the reports that they reported about 40%. But if you actually look at the breakdown of the numbers, the votes that they had, all of them were perfectly divisible by 3.
Oh,
interestingly enough.
Sounds like we got the health ministry numbers. They go up by the same amount every day.
And I have a contact, because I wrote about elections a few years ago, I have a contact in one of the government ministries, in the Ministry of the Interior, who of course is against the regime secretly. And he sent me screenshots of the computers.
Wow.
Folks,
So
only
for sure
here,
they are faking it for sure.
only here do you have somebody who is so plugged in. No, I'm serious.
No, they're gonna hack
Emily
my phone.
Schrader, the most plugged in,
Time to get
the
a
most plugged in specialist, real on the ground specialist that we have in Iran. Thank you.
By the way, I've been hacked like 8 times by Iranians since October 7th.
Oh.
And
For me,
How bad is it? Do you recommend it?
For me, it was the good people of Indonesia. But anyway, let's move on. I want to move on to Sharma to talk a little bit about France. Sharma, you're Moroccan, you speak French, you have a lot of connections in France.
Yeah.
What happened? Marine Le Pen came waltzing in, but it's not clear that she's going to be able to get the majority to rule because now, and I think that this is maybe working against us, which is what happened in Spain, that the moderates are now going to create a coalition with the extreme left in order to pull out the right, and then we're going to wind up with a worse government than Macron.
Absolutely. So that's exactly what's happening in France. The extreme right has been trying to climb into power for decades now. Before Marine Le Pen, it was her father. Her father was notorious for being extremely anti-Semitic and xenophobic and racist. The party itself went through a lot of changes, however, and part of the changes is also bringing in a fresh, young, new face.
What a cute guy.
A cute guy who also comes from a really tough suburb. So these are called les banlieues, where usually have
Like projects.
the projects where you've had a lot of immigrant communities, a lot of people who are feeling resentment, no belonging with the state, no attachment to the nation. And he's able, in many ways, to speak the language of different communities and to build alliances effectively. And plus, he's young. He's like 28. And so it's been completely rebranding this party. And so what's happening is Macron called in sort of an emergency elections for l'Assemblée nationale, for parliamentary elections. And he did not expect to
lose so badly.
To lose so badly and to see these results, which are actually really concerning because of what you brought up, because le Front National or the l'Assemblée Nationale is leading, and the second leading, I guess, coalition of partners is the left.
The extreme left.
Is the extreme left.
Yeah.
And it's actually really, really close in terms of numbers, which exposes just how divided society is. And once again, who suffers the most from these kinds of divisions when they show up specifically within democracies where law enforcement isn't so strict. It's the Jews and then other minorities. Yeah. And so there is a state of panic. Obviously, after...
Don't we have a second round? I'm a bit confused about this system.
There is a
Is it over now, or there's another round?
On July 7th.
And then what is that?
And then
Isn't it between the top two parties?
Yeah.
So it's the
It's the same
extreme
as
right
Iran.
and the
They're
extreme
both
left.
runoff.
Yes,
So the runoff is the extreme right versus the extreme left.
absolutely.
And Macron is not even in the story.
Macron won't be in the story.
So 7th of July, you're saying. 7th of July, something
We'll have
to
more
watch.
updates. for
We will
viewers next
update.
week.
And look, I think your point about the Jewish community is a really important one. They're really being squeezed from both directions. And, there was just this report that the French Jewish leadership has actually sought a meeting with Marine Le Pen and with members of her party because they realize that may be the direction
That may be their only hope.
That may be their only
The
hope.
irony of it.
I mean, it's insane. On the other hand, they're quite upset at Macron for essentially giving kosher certification to the far left.
Yes.
Because he wants them as a counterbalance to Le Pen. They, of course, are virulently anti-Israel.
And October 7th deniers?
I mean,
they're horrible.
vicious in so many ways. I would not want to be a French Jew right now.
In fact, the great rabbi of France wrote a piece this week about how he's urging young French Jews to leave to Israel.
That's crazy.
France is no longer safe. It hasn't been safe, safe for decades
For
now.
the rabbi of a country who has represented spiritual diaspora presence in that country to say leave, things are bad.
He said there's no future. There's no future for
That's
Jews in
crazy
France.
because if we jump now to the UK elections, because we've basically covered the world, guys, this is really incredible. I remember when Corbyn was running for election to be the prime minister, the chief rabbi, Mervis, came out and said, we're against anti-Semitism. We have to. They put up the Jewish community with the rabbi leading it, put up a fight against Corbyn. And that's one of the reasons that Labour had one of the worst defeats. But he never said leave the country. Right. And so this is very interesting that in France things have gotten so bad. And the UK, I think the Conservatives are going to lose. We're going to have Labour. They're trying to be moderate. They're trying to appease both sides. I don't know what's going to happen, but it's sure that the UK is not dealing with their Islamic fundamentalism. They're not dealing with...
They're worried about
their
an
radical
intifada.
mosques. They're not really dealing with their homegrown terrorists. And so we will keep you all updated about what's going on. And on that note, now for our very popular segment, and I think now we've agreed, Avi, in the last few weeks, that it's not just a popular segment, it's also group therapy. Okay? Scumbag of the week. And so, Sharma, who is your scumbag of the week?
My scumbag of the week is from Turkey. It may or may not be Erdogan, but here's the story. This week, an Israeli plane in emergency landing had to reroute and land in Turkey. And what happened? The Turkish airport did not allow it to refuel, and therefore they had to take off without refueling, which goes against aviation standards.
Wow.
And potentially putting all of the people who were on this flight's lives at risk, all because Turkey and Erdogan want to get some points from their Islamist friends in the region.
Just for context, Israel and Turkey had 70 flights a day. Listen to me. 70 flights a day. There's zero now Israeli tourism in Turkey because it's just not safe. Everybody's going to Greece.
Yeah.
It's going to be very, very packed this summer. But it's incredible that not only has of course the tourism gone down, everything's gone down. Israel is actively looking to replace all the imports that come from Turkey with other countries.
Yep.
But that they wouldn't let an Israeli plane refuel.
And you would think that the Turks would learn from history, because the only reason why the Ottoman Empire became powerful is because of the Jews who were kicked out of Sefarad, of Andalusia, and sought refuge because the king at the time, Sultan Bayezid, opened its doors to the Jewish population of refugees, and who were able to build an incredible empire with collaboration with the Ottomans.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's an incredible.
And so this is why I try to drill this in people's heads. Learn your own history. Exactly. And now that we're seeing these patterns of democracy failing across the West, I would hope people would understand that across our lifetime as human beings on this planet, building civilizations, whenever the persecution of Jews becomes systematic, civilizations collapse.
Well said, sister. Emily, who's your scumbag?
Follow her.
Nobody does.
It's a tough act to follow.
Don't want to sit next to her.
None of us
we
do.
love her. So my scumbag this week is kind of a broad scumbag. It is all, really, of the international media, as well as whoever made the decisions in the US and UK to open polling stations for the Islamic Republic.
What?
Yes.
Tell us what happened.
They did do that. So they had these elections, as we spoke about in Iran, for the president. Then there was also a runoff election between the top two candidates, Jalili and Pezeshkian, who's considered or reported to be a reformist. There's no such thing as that. I want to say that once and for all. No matter what the international media is telling you, there is no such thing as a reformist. Everybody who's running in Iran for an election has already been chosen by the Ayatollah. There is no alternative. There is no hope for actual reform within this. I think pretty much any Iranian can tell you this, both in the diaspora and inside of Iran. The only way you're going to see change is when the Islamic Republic falls. But the fact that the international media and these governments sort of paid lip service to the idea of elections is actually doing a disservice to the Iranian people, who have been living under this terrorist dictatorship for 45 years, that has been manipulating their currency, that has been executing and raping and assaulting young girls, that has been murdering and executing protesters, that has been hanging LGBTQ, that has been denying women their most basic of rights, whether it's freedom of travel or the ability to divorce or custody over their children, or even riding a bicycle and smoking shisha. Yes, both of those are illegal for women and only women in the under the Islamic Republic. This is what that regime stands for. And for any Western democratic country to allow the Islamic Republic, even if it's only inside of their embassies, which, by the way, it wasn't, not in the UK and not in the United States.
Wasn't even in the embassies?
There were about 30 polling stations in the United States. And this is a regime,
Who's allowing this?
this is a regime that's sworn to the destruction of the entire West, including the UK, of course, and the United States. I mean, they call the United States the Great Satan. And somehow somebody in the US government allowed the Islamic Republic to run polling stations. And by the way, one more thing, the reason why they wanted to have polling stations in other countries is because they are so desperate for votes, because these elections are sort of an implication of their legitimacy to rule the country, which of course they have none. And that's why we see such abysmal, embarrassing turnout for them.
But who voted,
One of the things,
Emily? Who voted?
people who support the regime or people who are forced to, which is what I was just going to finish with. In Iran, they forced all the prisoners to vote under penalty of lashes or worse, prison sentences if they don't do it. So this regime has zero legitimacy. They're literally forcing people to vote in these elections. It doesn't matter who wins or who loses. It's all a puppet of Khamenei, and it's not going to change until we see a different reality. And again, same, coming back to the same point, we have to see leadership from the Western world that is willing to stand up to radical Islamist pro-terror ideology that harms Muslims, Christians, and Jews, and all other religious and ethnic minorities alike.
Western civilization, absolutely. It's incredible that we literally have a Hitler, which is the Islamic Republic, and the whole world has turned to Chamberlain. It's just incredible. I can't get my head around it. Avi, change of pace? Who's your scumbag this week?
Well, Fleur, I'm glad you asked. My scumbags of the week are the organizers of the Glastonbury Festival in the UK. It's a big music festival, takes place every year almost. And it's a huge celebration. Yeah. Some of the biggest names in music to come. But the fact that there could be a music festival that did not in any way acknowledge the victims of the Nova Music Festival, who were murdered, who were raped, who were abducted on October the 7th, is a travesty. It wasn't mentioned at all. And just to add insult to injury, so many of the performers were allowed to engage in virulent anti-Israel and I would say anti-Semitic speech. There was merchandise that was sold that had flags of Palestine over the entirety of this land, totally erasing Israel.
God.
It was horrific to see, to witness from afar. And I think they certainly do merit the designation of Scumbags of the Week.
Oh my God, were there any particular artists who were worse than others?
Well, there have been reports that Dua Lipa, during the course of her performance, made an effort to direct the camera's attention towards a corner of the audience where they had a lot of Palestinian flags.
Right.
I'm not sure how true that is.
Right.
But there were a bunch of Irish acts in particular that used their stage to talk about the so-called genocide in Palestine and how important it is to stand with the people of Gaza and so forth. Of course, not a word about Israelis. I will say that Coldplay at one point had a moment.
Nice. They've been good.
Correct. They at one point said, let's send out love to the world. And they did mention Israel as one of the places to which we should be sending love. That, of course, generated a great deal of opposition online. The Twitter mob.
And they said Israel and Palestine.
Israel and Palestine.
Yeah.
That's not good enough.
No, we shouldn't exist, and that's the bottom line.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. The Glastonbury Festival organizers are definitely worthy scumbags. Avi.
I agree.
Now, my scumbags this week, I need a breath for this. There's 5 Israelis who decided that it was a good idea to write an article in the New York Times this week, a letter, let's call it, don't invite Netanyahu to Congress. Now, Netanyahu, end of July, is going to be speaking to Congress, as many prime ministers in the past, including him, many times, have spoken to Congress. And we have David Harel, Tamil Pardo, who is the ex-Mossad guy, Talia Sasson, I have no idea who she is, Ehud Barak, well, we know who he is, Aaron Chichenova, and David Grossman, famous writer. And there's many things that bother me about this letter, many, many things. But I just want to read you a little excerpt so that you understand why I'm so bothered. They write, Mr. Netanyahu's appearance in Washington will not represent the state of Israel and its citizens. According to who?
To those 5 people.
To those 5 people. Then they go on to tell us who they are and why they're more important than any of us. They say, we come from a variety of areas of Israeli society: science, technology, politics, defense, law, and culture. And so therefore, the hairdresser or the truck driver or the lawyer in Israel or any other profession, we do not deserve the same standing as these incredible people who come from a variety of Israeli society. And what really bothers me is that these people are supposed to be holding the fight for democracy. You have a democratically elected prime minister, whether you love him or you hate him. Bibi was legitimately elected. And who are you? They've broken many rules here, but one of the main rules that really bother me is this kind of unspoken rule or custom that you don't go and criticize your own government when you're out of the country.
Right.
These people go to a publication that have been extremely anti-Israel, if not anti-Semitic, for a long time, but particularly since the war. And they go and they write in this publication, don't invite our legitimately elected prime minister because we are better than everybody else in Israel and we're the real representative. This smacks of such elitist bullcrap. I can't even begin to tell you how angry I am about this. But what's really ironic or symbolic is that this weekend, this Shabbat, we read the portion of the Torah that talks about the spies. The spies, and Rebbetzin Malka Fleischer talked about that last week in a different context. But the spies episode is a very kind of symbolic episode for the Jewish people. Moses sends out spies to see what Eretz Israel, what the land of Israel is. And they come back, most of them, 10 out of 12, saying, let's not go there. It's horrible. They're going to kill us. They're going to beat us. And to me, this on the same Shabbat of that parasha, of that portion of the week, what they're saying to the U.S. is, you are the overlord. You are the sovereign. Come and please rule us. Like we don't have echoes of that from when we called the Romans to come in and destroy our own temple because we were divided. There's so many things about this letter that bother me, but essentially to me, it's just a betrayal of your own people and a betrayal of your own democratic country. And so, yes, David Harel, As my father would say, they know you in your own house and you're famous only there. Pardo, okay, Talia Sasson, they brought in a woman just to say, oh, look how diverse we are. 1 woman out of 5 men, okay. Ehud Barak, Aaron Chechanova, and David Grossman, you are my scumbags this week. Whew.
Very nice.
That was
I,
Pretty scummy.
this was brewing since Friday.
I mean, if Netanyahu were truly a dictator who seized power undemocratically and was gripped, you can kind of understand how these democratic dissidents could want to use a platform like the New York Times to talk about why he shouldn't be invited to speak to Congress. That is not the situation. Disagree with him as virulently as you want. He is still the elected leader of this country.
Exactly.
I think this is deeply inappropriate.
Deeply inappropriate is another way of saying scumbag.
I'm the diplomat of the panel.
You really are. You really are. I'm very proud that I got you to say the word scumbag on air. Okay. So as we always finish our wonderful show on a positive note, because we like to bring light and color to the world, we have our Heroes of the Week segment. So Avi, let's start with you. Who is your hero of the week?
So I have what I think would be regarded as an unorthodox choice of my hero of the week. It is Willis Carrier.
Who is that?
Who's Willis Carrier? Willis Carrier was born in 1876 in New York. And in 1902, he invented the air conditioner.
Oh, I see where you're going.
This country would be uninhabitable were it not for Willis Carrier.
I agree.
At this time of year, we're going through an unprecedented heat wave. Jerusalem is tough enough. Tel Aviv is literally uninhabitable. Uninhabitable. But we have the respite of being able to go into our air-conditioned homes and workspaces and shops and so on and so forth. And we have Willis Carrier to thank for this modern manifestation of Zionism. The fact that we're able to live in this land is a credit to Willis Carrier. And so he is my hero of the week.
Well, only Avi Mayer could turn the air conditioning into a Zionist enterprise. Thank you, dear. Thank you.
Welcome.
Emily, so who's your hero this week? Should I even ask?
So my hero or heroes this week, Noah Argamani and Lior Argamani, who sadly very recently just passed away.
Yeah.
And the reason that I chose those two, or I guess all of the Argamani family, don't want to leave out her father as well.
Absolutely.
I mean, her father has just exhibited such strength throughout this entire ordeal. Noah was kidnapped, of course, on October 7th. She was in, captivity for 8 months until she was very, very heroically rescued by the IDF in a really remarkable, almost movie-like operation. She is, safe. I'm sure she's going through a lot, but shortly after her return to Israel, her mother did pass away after a lengthy battle with cancer. It was one of the reasons that there was so much pressure and discussion about Noah Argamani and getting her home, because her mother's really last wish was to be able to see her daughter safely back home. So I'm happy for them that she did get that she did get to experience that and to see her mother, and that her mother, of course, got to see her daughter again. Very, very sad all around, but for that reason and for their incredible strength that they have inspired the entire state of Israel with throughout this, I'm making them my hero of the week. And I also want to urge again for the release of all of the hostages, in particular Noah's boyfriend, who still remains in captivity. She's spoken out about it a little bit, and I'm sure she will continue to, but we also will not stop speaking about this issue until we're able to bring them all home.
Absolutely, Emily. We can't get used to the situation. You're 100% correct. Sharma, who are you going to inspire us with this week?
Before I do this, I'm just going to go grab like a diplomatic prop. Right back.
Oh,
Diplomatic prop.
Diplomatic prop.
Got it.
Oh. After a quick costume change, Sharma, who is your hero of the week?
Well, if you can't tell by my Moroccan flag that I'm wearing as my blanket of safety, my hero of the week is actually the Moroccan king, Mohammed VI, whom this week, first of all, sent 40 tons of aid to Gaza on one hand, and at the same time allowed and helped an Israeli warship land in the port of Tangier to refuel and get whatever necessities that the personnel needed before it continues its way across the Mediterranean, after Spain refused to let them dock in their waters. Yes.
So Spain refused and Morocco took them in. That's the new
Yeah.
Middle East
And
North
that-
Africa.
And that's the model, I think, that we need the West to see. That at the same time that Erdogan and Turkey being hijacked by Islamists, they are not allowing a plane for humanitarian reasons to refuel. We have a model from Morocco where they're allowing Israeli worship to refuel, and at the same time using the peace deal in the relationship between Morocco and Israel to help Palestinian civilians.
I think that's an incredible model. And I think Hassan VI has always been pro-Israel, friendly with Jews. We've all enjoyed the fruits of the Abraham Accords with Morocco, engaged in that. My mother comes from Tangiers, so we are very imbued in Moroccan heritage. So we're very happy that that's actually a positive relationship. Thank you, Shaman.
Fleur, you've actually been, of course, instrumental with the Abraham Accords and their implementation over the past few years. The contrast between what you were just talking about in Morocco and what we see happening in the streets of New York and Los Angeles and Paris and London and other major cities could not be sharper. Arab countries and Arab societies and Arab leaders want to have a relationship with Israel.
They get it.
Yes, they get it.
They get what their enemy is.
get it.
We're the same enemy. We have the same enemy.
And it's the radicals, the extremists in the streets of these countries, these voices of hate and bigotry that either don't get it or are just so filled with hate that they can't see what is right in front of them.
Maybe the future is East.
Maybe it is.
Maybe that's where we are.
Indeed.
So my heroes this week, I've actually brought before here as a hero, but I saw them again yesterday and I just have to mention them. And it's John Polin and Rachel Goldberg, the parents of Hirsch Goldberg Polin, because these wonderful people who, admittedly I know socially for many years, families of friends, they are not leaving one stone unturned. And the strength that it must take, just like the Algamana family, and they are really symbolic of all the parents of the hostages, not just for them, but the strength it must take to even get out of bed in the morning after this is happening, to put yourself out there, to travel. They've traveled around the world. They've gone to the Pope. They've gone to governments. They've spoken everywhere. On Friday, there was a hostage event, a hostage families event in Jerusalem, where they were all selling the different swag and the pins and, food. And there was John, selling stuff in order to keep this campaign going for all of the hostages, to bring back his son. And there's Rachel putting herself in front of every single audience, anything that could turn something, that could change one mind. And I just, my heart goes out to them, but my hat goes off to them and all of the parents. I see some of the, I saw a parent on Channel 12 the other day, a father who said, if I have to go into Gaza and rescue my son myself and get killed in the process, I will not sit here. And as a parent, I can understand the despair. And I feel like my heart is screaming with them. And I don't know what the solution is going to be. And we have to press forward towards a deal because that's the likelihood of getting them out. But again, my hat goes off to John and Rachel and to the community of parents that they represent. You are our heroes every minute of every day, and we will keep fighting and praying for your children to come home. And so on that bittersweet note that we have incredible heroes, incredible resilience in this country, we say goodbye this week, again with the prayer that by next week, all our hostages will be home. Amen. Thank you for watching.